Hello, this is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and today we're looking at a third submission by Lauren of her horse Matchbox. I'm happy to say here that everything continues to improve here as we go on with this tape, but you answered your own question about whether you should have had the side reins on sooner in this outdoor situation where he's a little distracted, and the answer is yes. So if you go around a couple of times and he just, keeps in that sort of not quite there position. It's not terrible, but he's not really stretching into it the way we would like him to do. You can see how he's kind of raising his head with each stride there and kind of pulling along with the shoulders a little bit. So yes, you would have been right to put on the side reins, and as soon as you do, you see the effect that it has, so without any problem. Now, ultimately, as you go on to say, the next day he lunged fine without them at all, and that's exactly what you want to do. So, as soon as you start out and he just starts stretching down and stays there and goes into the trot, as you see some of my horses do, then that's all you have to do. But if you find they're distracted, it's good to have the side reins there and certainly available to you, at this stage of the game anyway, until you're really sure that he's got this down and you're going to be able to reinforce it anywhere you go. So yes, you would be right to have just gone ahead and put the side reins on there. But I do like the walk is generally getting more active, and you were certainly right to say he looks a little off there when you go to the trot in this sort of hollow or hot trot. And it's very normal. I'm not just saying that there isn't something little there, but he's also kind of a small circle there. And of course, you're working on grass. That may exacerbate things. Now, I personally have no trouble with working on grass. I've trained many, many horses out in grass pastures, just like you are here. When I worked in hunt country in Unionville, Pennsylvania, the people that I worked for didn't believe in having a ring. So I literally had to start steeplechase horses and fox hunting horses out in the middle of a field just like this and get on and ride them and do everything I was going to do. And I never really had a big problem with it. It's just a bigger space, that's all. Just means you just have to have your lunging down, your technique to get it done. Now, that is the little problem here, is that you're not quite sending him out enough. Once again, he's kind of coming in at you on the circle. So we'd like him to just stay out a lot more. So remember, the whole thing is just to get both ends of the horse on the same circle. So you need to just send him away from you a little more actively. But of course, as we said here, I would have gone ahead and put the side reins on long before this. He's just gone around too long already here. Looking a little hollow. So it just doesn't do you any good. So once again, our goal in training is always to do as little work hollow as we possibly can. That's what's wrong with people that I see people coming out riding their horses, and then they try to stretch them at the very end after they've already been grinding them through movements for half an hour or an hour. And then they come back and act like it's a big deal to stretch at the end, and they usually don't get a stretch. So once again, you're never going to get one. So once again, it's just like, for a person, you have to warm up before you exercise. Well, the horse is the same way. Once again, read any good book on the subject, and it will tell you that. So that's what we want to do. So once again, this walk is a little more active, and I like that about it all the time. Once again, I just want you to be able to keep that him out on the circle there a little bit more, and just keep thinking about trying to watch the back end and make the back end yield to you. And that's also a big part of submission. Remember that mark in dressage that says submission. Well, submission is not a horse that's just been, broken over in the neck and strangled until, they're half crazy, but they give in. That's not what we're looking for. And a real submission comes from the horse understanding what it is that we want them to do and being a willing partner. That's what real submission is, because we don't have to beat them into that kind of submission. So once again, submission should actually be called something more like trust. The more your horse trusts you, the more it will be submissive, and it won't have the idea in its mind to resist. If we don't give it a lot to resist about. Once again, that's the biggest problem with so many people. If you don't understand how horses function over their backs, everything you're doing is always going to become uncomfortable for the horse. So, it's always going to be going like, what do they want? So we can see here, once again, as soon as you've gotten these side reins on, this looks a whole lot better, and already starting to stretch down a little deeper. And as you say, the walk looks a little more regular. So very often, there is such a thing as bridle lameness. Now, once again, look how nice this horse's neck looks here. And that's a perfect example of seeing the difference. Now the horse is using a different set of muscles, and look how much easier it is for the horse to be rhythmic. Horses are never over their back in rhythm, if they're not over their back, unless they're just driven crazy and they have that kind of tense, stomping kind of foot action that we see, sadly, in many upper-level horses these days. Remember that, relaxation is always the hallmark of good dressage, and if they're not relaxed, there's no other way to get this, to get upper level movements and really to get collection without going through this process. Once you understand that, it simplifies the whole thing, and you understand your horse has to develop into collection. Again, collection is never anything you can pull a horse into. You'll never become collected by pulling on its neck. So once again, this looks really good now, and once again, the neck of this horse looks much more out in front of it now. It's really good, starting to swing much more over its back. And once again, one of the points, today we're all very spoiled, to have these perfect rings that so often we have. And I see so many dressage riders that are, would be scared to death to even ride their horses in a field, because they'd be afraid they'd fall down, and in many cases they would. And that's what happens with hollow horses. No matter how high they lift their legs, remember, just like a saddlebred or Tennessee Walker, it's still on the forehand. It's just putting its legs down. There's no moment of suspension in those horses' gaits. That's why the people who ride them say, oh, it's just like sitting in an armchair, because there's no movement in the back. That's what they have destroyed by making the back so hollow, and then they teach the horse to snap its legs up, which of course destroys all its joints. Thus the short-lived career of all the horses that do things like that, and reining horses that just get reined over and over again. So once again, just same thing with jumping. People are doing too much every day. You can't jump a horse every day and think it's going to stay sound. It won't. The best horses in the world. But if we do this work, we can bring them all slowly and have them for many, many years by developing their top line and putting a shock absorber system on them. That's what it's really all about. So once again, moving into the trot here, I do still see a little something here with this horse, and that it doesn't look absolutely perfectly level on both legs, but it certainly looks better here, and it's gotten better as you've gotten into the stretch here. But once again, if we talk about that's the importance of having a horse over its back, because long before there were perfect dressage arenas with spongy footing that was absolutely even to every stride, most horses were ridden over unlevel ground. And even in the rings that we used to ride in, I certainly went to many 3-day events where the dressage was on a grass field, just like this, a mowed grass field. Some of them weren't even level, and we were able to ride our horses because our horses are working over their back, so they don't stumble and fall over every little extra high blade of grass, thus being the point of all this. Getting from point A to point B efficiently. So once again, this swing is looking much better, and as I said, you answered your own question about the side reins. Yes, put them on sooner. But this horse is beginning to look, a lot more even in its gaits now, and you can see that as it stretches down, it looks better and better. So once again, there is such a thing as bridle lameness. Very often when horses are hollow, and once again, a hollow horse is never going to be able to bend to the side. Remember, a horse must lift its back before it can bend on the side. So once again, why we see so many frustrated horses with their necks bent around, because people are trying to bend them, but as long as the back is hollow, the vertebrae in the back are rigid, and it's very difficult to bend them. The horse, as soon as it lifts its back, bend becomes possible. So very often what we see in horses, that people think are lame, are often what we call a bridle lame or a bit lameness, where the horse is just so out of sync with itself that it actually looks irregular because it's just trying to deal with the way it's going. And then if you have some other little conformational problem, like maybe one foot that's a little different than the other, or a knee set of the cannon bone or something like that, which we see in a lot of horses, that's going to be exacerbated tenfold if it's not working over its back. Once again, you'll see even horses that wing and paddle and this sort of thing, once you get them working over their backs, they at least track a little bit straighter and usually interfere a lot less. So that's the goal in all this. Now this is starting to look really good here, and as you said, yes, so what you'd want to do, if these are the longest rather, that these side reins go, they could even go a little bit longer there, because once we don't want the horse to curl back. So if it starts to stretch down and we see that it starts to come behind the vertical, then we do need to either lengthen the side reins, or if this horse is at such a case as you said, the goal is to lunge without anything at all. That's what we would like to do. So once they get steady into the contact, they'll get steady into the contact with just your bit, with the bit like that. Now that's looking really good. And once again, look how the more this horse head and neck goes down, look how much rounder the hind end moves. And that's the one thing, as I said, someone sent me some questions the other day that this trainer is telling them that, if the horse stretches, it'll never be able to come underneath itself. I mean, and that's just obviously backwards thinking. I hope all of you that have watched these videos have, developed enough eye to see that. And I say, once you develop your eye, then you'll be able to go and watch these people that you want to know, well, should I go take a lesson from them or should I not? Well, go and look what their horses look like, and that'll tell you right away. If they've got big hunter bumps and they're not developed over their top lines and they're all U-necked, I would suggest that you look somewhere else. But once again, that was really good where you got to there and showed an improvement over what we've seen before. getting on here. I love how this walk is starting out. And by the way, what a beautiful place to be able to ride in. Not sure where you are exactly, but we're out here in California, and boy, are we homesick sometimes for those nice big grass fields that you're riding in there. Our horses would be in heaven, so to speak. But anyway, this is really nice. And one of the things I want to think about is that, when you're working young horses, or when I say young horses, I always mean undeveloped horses. You're getting started, hacking out has to be a part of what they do, but that doesn't mean you have to hack out alongside a road someplace. You can hack out in a ring by just, once again, not over pressurizing your horse. And that's what we want to do all the time. I think we should always ride dressage without so much intensity. We see so many dressage riders that, they look tense, the horses look tense. It looks like, everybody looks angry. The riders look angry at the horses and the horses look angry at the people. And in most cases, they probably are, because they're having this total mix up of what are we trying to do here, and a confusion. So once again, I think you kind of always want to ride with a certain degree of casualness about what you do and just hacking them out and letting them relax. So we're never over pressurizing them. Now this walk looks really good here and it's starting to stretch much better. I would like to see you stretch up just a little more and lift your chest up. Ultimately, you're going to want to be able to do all this with your hands a little more in front of you. Everybody, when they first starts this, they always want to drop their hands really down low. Now they're starting to come up there a little bit. But ultimately, if you watch me with these young horses, I rarely have my hands down very low. Even when I'm working on long rides and things, my hands are usually in front of me. Just something to think about. And as your technique develops, you will get to that place. But once again, getting the technique of just feeling the horse stretching into the contact is so important. And once again, the idea when you're riding there along in the walk, when you feel the horse go hollow on you, what you want to do is lift up and lift that chest and lighten your seat a little bit. And then ask the horse to come through with the leg. And then once again, once the horse is forward again, then you straighten up on the ball. Whereas if we sit straight up and down and let our weight completely relax, we're pressing down on the place we're trying to get to come up. So it's very important that we learn to lighten our seat in the saddle a little bit. You can actually come back with your shoulders. You can actually tighten your buttocks a little bit and your thigh a little bit just to relieve the pressure, and that'll move your seat bone kind of up a little bit. As you feel the horse and the wave come up underneath you, then you just straighten back on top of the ball. But you're doing a great job here. And once again, it's just so great to see all of you people doing this basically on your own and realize that, you can ride and train your own horses if you don't drive them crazy in the process, which is unfortunately what so many trainers do these days. They overcomplicate them. Once again, remember, a well-trained horse gets easier to ride, not harder to ride. So, if you had a horse and you could ride it when you got it and your trainer has made it so complicated that you can no longer ride it, there's something very wrong with that picture. Because if it were advancing in training, it would be becoming more trustful of the rider. It would trust you more. And so when you put a beginner rider on an advanced level horse, a correctly trained advanced level horse doesn't just go crazy just because the person grips a little bit. Because they trust the people, they might be a little confused about what you want, but they're not going to go out of their minds the way some that we see today would do. But once again, getting back here to you walk, that idea of just having, a little nonchalance about it and being able to spend lots of time, even if you're in a ring. And I think that's very important for us here in California because a lot of us don't have places where we can hack horses out. But you can hack a horse out in a riding arena if you just, do it in a casual manner and just keep them stretching and active like you would and change direction. So I don't really see any difference. I don't over pressurize my horses any more in the dressage arena than I pressurize them outside the dressage arena. I don't pressurize them, so they don't get uptight either way. And once again, as they get bigger in the movement, and as I say to people all the time, it's the nature of a healthy horse to want to move. So, if you have a horse that just doesn't want to move, chances are it probably can't move comfortably. So, my suggestion is to work it where it can work, that is on the lunge line or in the walk. You can do a lot of walk work without damaging the horse. So go out and have a casual hack, but keep your horse working over its back while you do it, which is the answer to everything we do. So once again, walking out here, he could be a little deeper in this. It was better a little minute ago. Now he's kind of flattened out, and you can kind of see there. Now that's more like what we're looking for. And you can instantly see as he goes down, you just need to be a little quicker in taking back your contact is basically the thing here, and not losing it, because you sort of get him there, and then he kind of, oops, and he pops out, and you lose a little contact. So the better you get at this, the better you will get at maintaining the contact, and just soften him a little bit with your fingers and see if he doesn't come right back into it. Once again, of course, you will have impulsed the horse forward with your leg first. We must always ask with the leg first. The only time we ask with the hand first is in an emergency situation where the horse is bolted with you or something. Otherwise, we always begin with the leg. So when people say the word half halt, what they should be saying is half forward. What we really want to do, the only way we can change the balance of the horse and not just slow down, is to engage the horse deeper into the body. So we want to feel that impulse go through the body of the horse from your leg to the rein, and then not pull back against that. The most contact we ever have is just slightly more than the weight of the rein. Of course, once again, if a horse races off with you or something, you do what you have to do, giving and taking, to be able to slow him down and save yourself. But once you start doing all this in the right order, you'll have less and less of those incidents of your horses, running away with you and this sort of thing, because there's no point in going into a trot in a horse that's not relaxed in the walk. So just bear that in mind. And as I said, it's the nature of a healthy horse to want to walk. Now this is looking much better here. And want to be active. So if they don't, as I said, they're probably just not in good enough condition. The back hurts or whatever. There's some reason that's preventing them from just having a free flow of energy through themselves, which is in the nature of the horse. And once again, that's what it means to ride a horse forward. This idea that we're riding them forward towards the bit, not pulling their necks back towards the rest of the body. So once again, this walk is improving a little bit, but still just slightly hollow there. You can see how he's pulling along with those shoulder muscles. Watch the underside of the neck there. And each time as he does go down, how much better the back end automatically starts to step in a rounder fashion. That is, the hocks make a rounder circle. Like right there, you start to get it for a moment. And once again, that's the right thing to do if you're going to make the transition and he's not completely right there in the walk. Then, don't worry about the transition itself. That's just what you want to do. Now, he does occasionally here, same thing kind of here, as he's come up, he's looked a little less stable than he did before. So, and of course, you would want to keep an eye on that if that's not just a bridle lame situation. But once again, see how he's gotten very hollow there, but then he starts to stretch, so that's really good. So he went from being quite hollow to a really good stretch there. So what I would say is, you're having really good success, but see how you lose contact there? You just got to keep that contact a little more consistent so he won't be so free to go up and down. That's what you want to do. So sometimes you'll be able to short circuit that sense of him wanting to pull up before it happens, by just keeping the contact more consistent as he's down there. But once again, he is starting to develop a nice little flow. Same thing here in the rising trot. There's times that you could get up a little bit, bring your shoulders back a little bit and come a little behind the motion if you need to send him through a little bit and help him balance on the hindquarters. But this is really good now. This has gotten into a really good place. So remember, the beauty of this classical system is that we're working the horse towards a position that allows him to do the work without physical discomfort. So, they become less and less resistive. That's why we see with our horses how you don't see all the swishing tails and pin-backed ears and all these kind of things, because we're not opposing the aids. That's what causes all of that. If you're pulling and pushing at the same time, you're driving your car with the brake on. It's just, the car's going to act up. Well, so is a horse. Now, this is beautiful right down through there. Look how he starts to stretch over his back. And of course, is he a little on the forehand at this level? Yes, of course they are. But just remember, no matter how impressive the head and neck or whatever may be in some horse that's hollow in the back, it's always on the forehand. It's never going to not be on the forehand. This is the only way to get a horse actually off the forehand. Once again, the only other way is that way where we overcompress the horse, where you see the riders who just really whip them up, and they, yes, they get their hindquarters to come under them, but they usually have rolkered the neck in the process, because in order to contain all that energy that they're trying to create, and it's not impulsion. Impulsion is not nervous energy. Impulsion is the horse's to the degree the horse's physical development allows it to be free, so to speak, and move without any kind of interference in its body, and let the energy flow through its body without interference. In other words, it's that possibility of movement, like a healthy athlete who's ready to go, so to speak. Well, that's what real impulsion is. It feels powerful. It feels like a powerful wave. It doesn't feel like it's like nervous energy. And the horses don't, when they're doing it correctly, you don't see all the lathering that you see on some of these dressage horses these days. Once again, that was a nice transition there. You didn't do anything to try to interfere with it. You just let it happen. And once again, the stretch is going better. And the horse is looking, every time this horse stretches, he looks better than he did before. So just know the natural process here that it takes as the horses stretch down. Once we get that consistent, takes about a year, the withers start to pull up through the shoulders, and the horse will just start to carry itself off the ground. You'll just magically see the front end, and you'll be able to bring the head and neck up without losing the trot. That's the test, So That's what we never want to do. So working horse on a working trot on any given horse changes day to day as the horse develops. So to say that the head and neck has to be here or there, as I have been told, that trainers have told people, the head and neck has to be, the pole has to be level with the withers. Well, it depends on the horse, and it depends on the type of head and neck set that the horse has. So, as I said, the horse's head and neck has nothing to do with whether the horse is on the forehand or not, unless it's to do that it's simply not allowing the horse to get underneath itself because it's too high and it's developed under the underside of the neck. But once again, this is really nice, and it's starting to free. This horse just generally looks more balanced, and once again, is starting to develop a little impulsion. So watch how, once again, the neck is down, but look how much more spring there is in the horse, and that's what tells you whether the horse is on the forehand or not, not the head and neck. So when we must learn to not just look at the head and neck, but how much, as the horse begins to move correctly, it lifts the forehand off the ground. Once again, for those of you who haven't seen it, I highly recommend that you watch our videos on collection. There's one in particular about developing the rider's eye, where I take a horse from collection to working trots. So you can see how the horse clearly elevates its forehand even more when we go to the collected trot versus the working trot. But that's what you'll see all by itself. You'll just see your horse here like he's already starting to spring a little more off the ground, even though he's not there yet. Every time he stretches down just that little bit more, you see more spring in the back. So I think the biggest problem for you there is just getting contact quicker. You could also, when his head comes up, come a little behind the motion, bring your shoulders up so you'll be more effective in sending him through from your legs. And just become steadier and steadier in those reins. But know that you're on the right track here. I mean, if you can do this much, if you can get it there 10-20% of the time now, it won't be long before you'll begin to get it all the time. Because once again, we're working the horse into a position that feels way better. Now look how the horse looked there. All of a sudden, as soon as that neck went down, look how you can see the ball rolling over the ground. Look how much more compression starts to happen in the hock. So for anybody to say that, that the horse cannot come underneath when it's stretched, really hasn't studied the subject very much, is all I can say. But this is looking much, much better. Yeah, it's very nice right there. Comes up a little bit once again, and that's just because you just lost contact a little bit. So I think as you just work to get a steadier contact, that most of these problems are going to disappear here very soon. And once again, if you can stretch, if the horse will stretch on the lunge line, as you said, without you doing anything at all, without the side reins at all, it won't be long before they'll stay there very consistently. Because once they learn it, as I said, we don't have to force a horse into correct physical structure. They do it all by themselves if we allow that to happen. But once again, how long it's going to take to get that happening depends on how much damage has been done to a horse, how it was raised. I mean, as I said, very often now we see babies, especially out here in the West, that people have raised in small pens where they simply have just not gotten enough exercise in their life. And if not that, we see oftentimes, horses that even come over here from Europe, and, people just don't get, they buy these beautiful horses and then they just watch them, turn into nothing, in the hands of trainers here because they don't understand how to maintain the top line. So they just, it would be like buying yourself a Formula One car and not knowing enough to change the oil in it and just driving it until it burns up. Well, that's what we see happening to many, many even well-trained warm bloods that come over here. That are bought. So it's something for people to wake up to, a wake-up call for those of you who are out there working with trainers and things. Once again, if you've bought a beautiful horse and it's turned into a basket case, or you've watched its top line disappear in the hands of your trainer, I would highly recommend that you look for another trainer. Or in many cases, if if you can ride as well as this young lady here, you can just train it yourself, because it isn't difficult to train a horse correctly. If you can walk, trot, and canter at the level of a C pony clubber, you can basically train a horse at least through the basic levels. Getting up into collection is another thing, but where you would have to develop a seat to a higher level. But once again, people who've developed horses over their backs without sitting to the trot, remember that. The same thing is true. If you look at all great horsemen, that's what my father told me when I was young. He said all great horsemen know the same thing, whether they're racing horses or they're Western horses. And if you look closely, you will figure out what that is. And, this is what it is. It's working over their back. So once again, it's the same thing like with the horse that, last year's horse that tried to win the Triple Crown. When it came out for the third race, it was sore and it started throwing its head. It wasn't running over its back, you know. If you watch the great riders in the past and even now, watch Marcus Enning from Germany, watch him jump his horses. His horses are slow, relaxed, calm. They have real collection, and of course he wins, you know. So once again, if we look at that, if we just look at the best riders in the world, we'll see a lot of similarities. As I said, talking about the Rodney Jenkins, one of our greats from the 60s and 70s, you know, who in his video, just a line that he has in there, as he just says out of the blue, "I like a horse who gets back up underneath me," you know, and that's it. He understood it, but he didn't really know what he would, you know, in the sense, he knew what he was looking for, but he didn't know how to express that to another person. And I think that's kind of been a little bit of the problem all along here. And also, to start with, if you've never been on a round horse, it's just conjecture. I mean, I've seen many, many people today, everyone I see uses the word round. Get your horse round, get your horse round. And I look at their horses, they're not round. The necks are pulled over, but they're not round. Round is something that happens over the entire length of the horse's top line, not just in the neck, you know. So once again, your horse is starting to look very round, and that's a great thing. So the swing is coming better. It looks happy. So I think every tape I see you here, this is just a good improvement. Once again, I'm seeing more development like here. Look at what a nice big swinging walk that is. I remember in the first video I saw of you, the horse was very much had a flypaper walk, as I call it, where the back end looks like it's stuck in flypaper. And you see how when he slows down, he gets a little bit of that look. But you've done a great job of sticking with the program. Just know that it will work. Stick with it, and this horse is going to develop absolutely beautifully for you and turn into something to enjoy for many, many years to come. And that's what our goal should always be, to make companions, you know, and partners in this work that we can really enjoy. And once you've ridden a horse like that, and you realize the joy of what a horse like to ride a horse that's actually willing to do what you're asking it to do, and actually enthusiastic about it, it just brings riding to a whole nother level of enjoyment. And that's what I see so often in dressage today, is how the enjoyment's gone out of it. I mean, I watch the people doing it, and they just look unhappy and angry, and many of them, and you know, that isn't what dressage should be about, you know, because it's that connection, you know, as Nuno Oliveira said, you know, dressage is evolving a real dialogue, a more complicated and, you know, complex dialogue between the horse and rider. It was a dialogue of back and forth, and not just us demanding and them doing what they do. So once again, nice walk here. I love how this is stretching out. And once again, you can do a lot of this. That's the beauty of the walk. You can spend a lot of time. It's again that idea that I talked about earlier in the tape, just the idea of like keeping it casual, and just like you're out for a hack. Of course, you want it to be active, just like you would if you were riding cross country through the woods. But you can have that same feeling in your ring, and that's really what we want to keep all the time. I mean, even when we ride out, we don't want to ride just without paying attention to what the horse is doing. That's the first way to get yourself killed riding out. So we want to always be riding a horse in the aids, but that doesn't mean that we have to hold against their mouths. Remember, in the correct stretch, the horse is in the aids. It's stretching into the contact and accepting a light contact and softening the jaw and pull, but it can only do that if it can lift its back. Remember, that's why so many horses are broken at the third vertebrae today, because if they're not lifting their back and you try to flex the jaw and pull, they'll just end up breaking at the third vertebrae. So remember that every time you see one that's had that done to it. So great job here. I look forward to you continuing this work. Thanks for sharing your day out in the sunshine and the grass with us. Absolutely beautiful. I'm jealous. I wish I were galloping a horse around that field right now. So great job. Keep it active, keep it working more actively. Once again, I see a little improvement there. And, you know, once again, when I see you in silhouette, that's what I'm always looking for, is how is that loin changing? Is it starting to fill in? And I think I see an improvement on this one. So keep working for that more activity, consistency, just trying to keep the slack out of the reins. That's all you really need to do. And as we talked about in the beginning, if you come out, if the horse doesn't stretch right away, really in the walk, when on the lunge line, just go ahead and put the side reins on. And if you can get a little bit longer with them, that's good too, once, because we don't want them to curl back. So, but ultimately our goal is to do, as we said, to just be able to stretch the horse without anything at all. So great work, and I look forward to your next video. Keep up the good work. This is Will Faerber from Art to Ride, and we'll see you next time.